Hello everyone. Welcome to our next keynote. The title of the keynote is Are We There Yet? Charting the Course for Long-Term Vehicle Security. Automotive cybersecurity has evolved significantly, but where is the journey headed? Bob Kaster, Chief Technical Expert at Bosch Americas and Board Director at Auto-ISAC, will take us through the history of automotive cybersecurity, the challenges of software-defined vehicles and long-term maintenance, as well as how to measure success while making the case for sustained investment. With over 40 million braking ECUs produced, 18 patents, and multiple Innovator of the Year awards, Bob combines technical expertise and strong leadership to advance security and safety across the whole automotive ecosystem. Robert, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you, Sergey. So let me just start here. So I just did the introduction, and I thought as a way to start this out, I took my young granddaughter on a camping trip at the beach this weekend. On the way home, she couldn't really articulate the question, but it was clear that she was dissatisfied with the length of the trip. And I think in the same way, people are wondering, are we there yet with automotive security? And that's what I'd like to talk about today, and appreciate your attention. I think if we think about automotive security, it feels like we're playing a sport where the referees are only calling penalties on one team. And if we have to follow the laws, something bad happens, we're the ones that get in trouble, and nothing really happens to the other side or our adversaries. And I think if you think about it, when I was in college, one of my professors said about the laws of thermodynamics were that you can't win, you can't break even, and you can't quit the game. And when we think about automotive cybersecurity, that seems to be a lot of that in the background, that we can't really win in cybersecurity. We can't even say that we'll never be attacked. And with the long lifetime that we have for vehicles, it seems like we can't really quit. That some of these cars that we're launching today will still be on the road when my 8-month-old granddaughter gets her driver's license. And that's things that after we're probably all of us on this call have retired, there will still be the vehicles that we've put into the road today will still be being used. So today I'd like to talk a little bit about where we're at, how did we get here, and then how do we thrive as we move ahead. From our Bosch perspective, I would say that the security timeline, this is sort of like how we think about it. In 1982, we invented CAN, released that into the market. And I think for the first time that you had two ECUs talking with each other, sharing information, and more importantly, they were influencing the behavior of other modules or other systems within the vehicle. And then I think over time that's grown substantially, where now we have many different ECUs interacting and relying on the information from many other ECUs and influencing their operation in ways that were probably not even conceived in the 80s when CAN launched. I think in 2010, we had cybersecurity was really a corporate research topic for us, where we had our corporate research team release HSM reference design for a hardware security module. What do we need, or what makes sense to put into our microcontrollers to support the security needs? And we began rolling out this reference design to several different chip manufacturers, putting that into the ICs that we would use for the microcontrollers for security. We purchased eScript, which was a startup company that had the software capability to run the HSM. I think we were involved in setting up SCAR. We set up a center of competence for cybersecurity, and also released CAN-FD, which was an expansion to the CAN protocol that allowed us to go from 64 bits to 64 bytes of content, which with the CAN bus, it was theoretically possible, but very impractical to put message authentication into messages that were so small on the payload. I think the next stage, maybe we could mark as 2015, where we began rolling out cybersecurity. So several of our products had significant security measures, robust measures in place for several of our customers. And that's something that we struggled with as we launched, and putting these new requirements into some of our products. We set up our security engineering process. We shared the version 0 at SCAR. We joined the Auto-ISAC. We set up our PCERT team, and then we also set up a cross-divisional team that I've been part of for several years. I think by 2018, automotive cybersecurity really was a mainstream product where basically all of our components and basically all of our customers had explicit security requirements and what we needed to do and need to support security in our products. We also then set up CVE naming authority. We hosted an Auto-ISAC summit, and we set up a global product security team to pool our experts together and try to approach cybersecurity from a global perspective. I think up until this year, most of the energy where we've been talking about cybersecurity was really driven by the technical challenges and the technical opportunities. So what can we do? How much security do we need? What can we afford? This customer wants it this way, another customer wants it a different way. I think in 2025, the energy has really shifted to become one more of compliance. And I know, Marcus, you were talking about that a little bit ago in the previous discussion, but we have governments that have explicit requirements that say you have to do this. And what's more challenging for us is that we see different countries approaching it not just in a different perspective, but having explicit requirements saying that you have to do it differently. So maybe with China, they say you have to use the Chinese algorithm. In the US, they say that you can't use software out of China. So it's not just a challenge of making additional testing or additional work to document it. It's really that we see a fracturing of the market and incompatibilities in the approaches from the different countries. And that's something that's I think a challenge that we will have to work with and probably see it growing in the future. We've also, just as a few milestones internally, we've released our third version of our security engineering process. Every couple of years, we do an update on that. We've within our team in the US, we've had our 47th bite-sized learning that we've been doing sort of on a monthly basis-ish, where we take various security topics and do training open to basically all of our associates. And we will also be hosting our 10th product security fire drill, where we're working through different challenges, trying to identify what makes sense for how do we approach this, what do we want to do, what do we not want to do, what are the teams that we need to pull in. And I think that practicing has been something that's been a very helpful part of our organization and building some maturity. And then if we look to the future, where many vehicles that we launch today will still be on the road 10, 20, 25 years from now, that I think the long-term maintenance and also software-defined vehicle architectures, that those two challenges are things that are out there on the horizon that will dramatically change how we work with cybersecurity in the automotive industry as we move ahead. I think this would probably resonate with all of you, that we see dramatic changes in product strategy, where EVs or ICE engines and things that are changing back and forth for what we want to do with what goes into the market as a whole. There's a lot of pressure from new competitors in the market and changing um, supply base, changing OEMs, differences in the different regions for how it's increasing or decreasing, and maybe stagnation on a global perspective for the auto industry. We also see a lot of the activities that are increasing the supply chain visibility to improve security, that's putting intellectual property at risk too. And we need to be careful. How do we uh, give our customers enough visibility so that they can have access to the information they need to do their job without risking the intellectual property that we have, that we need to continue funding additional innovation. We see increasing demands and complexity for cybersecurity, where it's just more pressure on the security teams as we're trying to accommodate these different demands. And then also challenges with training and retaining cyber talent, as there's really the needs outweigh the supply, and there's a lot of movement as we're trying to adopt with that or adapt to that. Another challenge that we have now, I know there's been several different changes within the industry where people have changed roles, people retiring, people being laid off, and uh, my personally, we got a new boss who we've had to try to explain why, not so much why security is important or if security is important, but how do we know that we're doing the right thing? And that's a challenge that we've been looking at, that automotive security, it's like a highly specialized race. It's got a very steep learning curve, it's an unclear path, and you never really see your opponents. And I think if we as we have all this energy that we put into complying with these demanding regulations, which even if we meet all of the regulations, that doesn't mean that we will never be attacked, and or that none of our products will be compromised. And that's a challenge I think that we need to process within our organizations, that it's very different from, say, a safety mindset, where if you do everything that you're supposed to do, you check the boxes, you do your testing properly, you write your specs well, and you test that you meet it, that you meet your objectives, and you can say that with certainty that you've met it. With the cybersecurity world, it's very different, that you can't really meet your objective. We also see the the world, or the earth, is flat when it comes to cybersecurity, that we connected vehicles face asymmetric competitors from all around the world, and that our long lifetime that we have for the vehicles really tilts the playing field in the favor of our adversaries. As we've been trying to work through with our new leadership, how do we measure what we're doing in security? It's been a challenge, and the big question is, how do we measure success when the only thing that you can really count are failures, or those are the things that are really only that are visible or attract attention? And if we tried to say, what's the number of cybersecurity issues that we manage each year, that if we manage more of them, that's not really a success. If we manage fewer, is that really, is that better? It depends on things that are outside of our control, or maybe it's a long cycle feedback loop, or the idea that, well, maybe the number of successful cyber attacks until the end of life of the product, that's maybe something that we really want to count, but that's difficult to come up with a number, because that it just takes so long that again, as I said, we'll all be retired before this number comes in. are all of our vulnerabilities patched? That's maybe a good idea, that maybe some of our products should have many of the vulnerabilities patched, but maybe there are some of them where it doesn't really make sense because of the nature of the vulnerability, or the how it's being used, or other modules in the vehicle that are providing additional protection that are not allowing it to be exposed. Do we comply with all government regulations? That, again, as we said, that's something that we have to do, but just doing that doesn't guarantee that we would be successful in our security world. Maybe patent submissions or things that we've done that we can say we had this innovation, or we came up with this new security feature or this new security product, that maybe those are good, but is that really what's getting us a return on the investment? And it's difficult to measure that one too. We've said, well, maybe if we look at our customers providing unsolicited positive feedback, and from a security world, that I think most of the feedback we get tends to be negative, where somebody finds something that went wrong, or maybe these new security features that we're pushing, that they cause problems for our organization to work through. Or maybe if some of our internal customers provide positive feedback, that's something that maybe feels good, but it's difficult to predict when that's going to happen. I think maybe one of the questions, or one of the ideas, was, do our customers select us because of good security? And that one, it's hard to say on that one, because as a supplier, your customer, or the OEMs, don't really tell us that that's why they picked us. As an OEM, the end customers are it's hard to say that they're picking a company because of good security or perceived good security, or maybe you can get some feedback if someone rejects you because of bad security or insufficient security. But again, that's something that it's anecdotal in nature, and it's very sporadic too. Another question or thought that we thought about is, do our security measures increase the price, or do they increase it only a reasonable amount? And are we putting too much security in, based on maybe if we put too much security in there, then we can't sell the product, and that's not really helpful either. Maybe we've successfully completed audits or certifications, and that's something that, again, it's a nice to do, and there are positive benefits to doing it, but they do not guarantee that you've been successful in your security. So that's, I think, some questions that we need to think about as the industry, for being able to demonstrate success, even though the typical ways that we would measure it don't really work for us. So what we were thinking is, can we leverage the quality mindset that's already prevalent in the automotive industry to measure cybersecurity, or to see how well we're doing with that? And I think that if we look at today's connected world, the definition of quality has expanded to include security, but I think we need new tools to help manage these security topics. If we look at a quality management system, which has been, I think, a key factor in the automotive design cycle for 20 or 30 years probably now, that the QMS is looking for conformance to a known static set of requirements and specifications. So from my braking world, say we go out to the test track on a sunny day, temperature above 70 degrees or Fahrenheit, 25 degrees Celsius, dry pavement, and we drive 100 kilometers per hour. We step on the brakes and we stop in 37.2 meters. We run that test 5 times, and if we pass 3 of them, then we passed. And that's something that we can, it's known, it doesn't change, and everybody agrees this is what we want to do. And our goal from the quality perspective is that we want to prevent predictable failures. We can collect a bunch of data talking about how often transistors fail, how often screws break, or different environmental tests that we do. And the mindset is, did we build the product right? This is what it's supposed to do. This is what everybody agrees that we want it to do. And then when we do our testing, we say, did we do it the right way? If we think about it for CSMS or cybersecurity management system, that really we're not looking against a known static set of requirements and specifications. We're trying to measure resilience against an intelligent, adaptive, and malicious adversary. So someone who's creatively trying to break the product. Maybe even we built the product correctly, but the question is, could a clever attacker break the product that we built correctly? And we're looking to manage unpredictable and evolving threats. And I think if we have the identical treatment, that could lead to gaps in risk management. So if we use the same mindset for quality that, or for, sorry, for security that we use for quality, that can lead to gaps as we manage our risk. A couple of these, say there are several other ones, but the three I wanted to highlight today would be a checklist fallacy, we call it, or I call it that. If you get a false sense of security from assuming that meeting specifications guarantees a secure vehicle, where we set up a bunch of tests, or as we had talked about, some of the previous speakers had talked about pen testing, and not saying that you shouldn't do pen testing, but that even if you do pen testing, even if you follow the right UN or ISO SAE 21434, or even if you do a good TARA, or even if you comply with UNE ECE R155, that does not mean that you have a perfect security in your product. Second one would be, say, a funding trap, where a lot of our quality issues are funded as part of the initial development budget. And then once the product ships, we have some budget that's maybe set aside for it, but it's very finite and limited. And that we don't have this idea where it's a one-time event, but we need continuous monitoring, maintenance, and patching over the entire lifespan of the vehicle. And then I think another challenge that we see is the likelihood for safety relevant software defects quickly decrease as the fleet matures. But for a cybersecurity issue, that the likelihood of having a security relevant finding increases as the field matures. And I think that we need to have something where we have an end of life or end of support policy that's set up. And if we assume that we want an infinite life, that's going to have an infinite cost for our systems. And I don't think any supplier has a concept for how to support that. I don't think any OEM has a concept for how to support that. And I think the end customers, so the people who buy cars, they're not willing to fund the cost that it would take to support end of life, or to support security updates for 25 years, 50 years, or 99 years, as some people have said. If we look at how do we classify, or how do we treat these issues, I think you could come up with a spectrum saying that some of them we have to treat as a standard quality issue. Some of them we have to treat very differently as a purely security issue. If we look at just maybe as an example, key management or key injection system issues that we would have inside of a automotive context, that it's clearly a cybersecurity related issue, because it's doing something with cryptographic keys. But if we have a problem where, say, we build 1,000 braking controllers and we have a problem with our key injection system and we inject the wrong key or a broken key or something like that, but we get those modules at the OEM tries to use it, the key doesn't work, that would be something that I think would be treated as a quality issue, 100% a quality issue, even though it's within the realm of a cybersecurity requirement that we need to would need to look at and understand what's the root cause, how did this happen. We try to make it so we can turn it on and turn it off again, verify that we understand what's going wrong, and then make a fix to address that. And then the way that would be handled as a warranty or quality funding, that's something that would come out really on the quality side. If we have maybe something in the middle where maybe we build, say, 1,000 ECUs and we use that same cryptographic key in those 1,000 ECUs. The ECUs might work perfectly fine. All functional tests are good. We can put it in the vehicle, drive it around, and nobody would really know from a quality perspective. From the security side, we would have to do the analysis to say, well, how bad is this? If we have maybe 2 modules with the copied key, yeah, that's not so bad from a security perspective, because it'd be hard to find that other module that's paired to it that you could get information from having that 2 keys or 2 uses of the same key. If we say it's 1,000 parts or 1,000,000 parts, then that one, even though the product functions properly, the security risk would be something that's significant, and then maybe we have to take action on it based on the security risk, even though the part works totally fine inside the vehicle. Another one that would be, say, 100% on the security side, say if someone cracks the RSA encryption algorithm, either with a quantum computer or maybe some other new attack vector that someone comes up with that renders the software signing or the key usage ineffective, and then maybe we have to do something to address that. But that's something that we would, the traditional quality tools and quality mindset would not help us there, because we implemented RSA properly. We used the key system the way that our specifications had told us, and we had a problem. So it's really a different problem, or a different type of problem, than not following the spec. And that's something I think that we need to have that nuance as we think about security issues, that not every security issue lends itself to being treated and managed as a quality issue. So if we look at different security approaches that we've had, I think from just medieval history in Europe and broader, the perimeter defense, where you build big walls around your city. I think Carcassonne is a very good example from France today. It had a huge investment that they did to build security. It was in a good location. They had all of the latest defensive measures put in place. And I thought was interesting is, less than 100 years after it was started, is the first test that it had, that there was a siege, lasted about 2 weeks. The attackers tricked the leader to come out under a white flag for negotiations. They kidnapped him and said, "We'll kill you and everybody if you don't surrender," and he ended up surrendering. So all of the security measures that they put in place, which looked good, they were very expensive, well done, were very ineffective, and they only held out for 2 weeks. And then another 20 years later, it was taken over by France and pulled into a new ownership, that they were originally trying to protect against. And then a few hundred years later, the government of France said, "Oh, let's just tear it down. It's in the way." And the people there said, "No, no, no. This looks really cool. It's a lot of our history, and we should save it." So today, it's still there. You can go visit it, but it has zero impact on security. It's sort of in the way. It's there. It's valued because of uh, the beauty of it, or the historical interest of it, but it has zero effectiveness for security. We, I think, have adopted some of this perimeter defense mindset as we've been putting that into our, say, first generation of automotive security, where we built concentric walls or layers of security that we would try to put to keep the bad guys out, and have the modules share information and interact that need it to be able to do that. So from our perspective, we said the first layer was a secure hardware or security hardware, where we use the hardware security module to put an anchor or root of trust and do the security measures inside the ECU. And we can check the integrity of the software. We can check the integrity of the data that's being communicated from one ECU to another, and verify that it's coming from the ECU that it claims to be. We added secure communication, where we have the integrity protection of critical in-vehicle messages, targeting messages that have a high safety impact or maybe a high security impact, that they would get a message authentication code as we do the communication. We've also gone with secure architectures, where we have domain segmentation and separate it, so that if we had a compromise on maybe the infotainment system, that would not impact the braking system or the powertrain system, that the separating those domains is a benefit to allowing us to have security, that if the one unit is compromised, it limits its impact in the vehicle. We have firewalls that we put in there to separate the domains, and also for communication outside the vehicle. And then the intrusion detection systems or anomaly detection systems have been things that we've added in there, so that if we see suspicious behavior, we could track it. I think the industry has struggled with giving the intrusion detection system or the security watchdog the ability to have control over the safety functions within the module or within the vehicle. That's a bit of a challenge with having the security appliance that doesn't really know what's going on in the outside world or what's going on in the vehicle. And it doesn't have that sophistication or that complexity to allow that to interfere with potentially life-saving actions that the different ECUs are doing. So I think of a worst case maneuver would be if you're doing a rollover mitigation, where the car is driving on the road and it's applying the brakes to keep the car from rolling over. And that's maybe something that most vehicles never see. And maybe if the intrusion detection system says, "Whoa, this is just suspicious behavior, it shouldn't be doing this," and then stop the system thinking it was an attack, that you could run the risk of interfering with life-saving actions that the vehicle might be trying to do. So just that the risk of giving the security appliance too much influence over the safety functions in the vehicle is something that I think we really haven't gotten comfortable with the idea of giving it that authority. And then I think maybe we've also put in our company, we've tried to put security processes to put security by design and make it easy to do security well and difficult to not put security into our systems. We've had security partner or building partnerships where we work with suppliers and sub-suppliers, and then also with our customers, so that we can communicate up and down the supply chain. And we've had security practice where we simulate events and prepare our organization. We've also, working with the Auto-ISAC has been a benefit for us, where we had our leadership come and say publicly that they support security, or hosting the Auto-ISAC, or sharing in an NDA protected environment about security findings. That's been beneficial, that we've seen to just to practice sharing about security findings in a protected environment, so that sort of like training wheels for how to manage it, and when you to get ready for the not so friendly events. Security testing, where we do set up pen testing and do that for some of our products, or different areas to do different types of pen testing, and then trying to do security training where we have a broad awareness for basically everyone, from sales to engineering to manufacturing and warranty service people, that they need to be aware of security as an issue, and how, if they see something suspicious, to be thinking, could this possibly be something that's a security related issue, or it's an attack, it's not just a part that broke. And we've also had training that we're trying to build deep training for cultivating the experts that we need to do the detailed security work. I think a few security measures that you would see in many vehicles today, with the digital signatures for software, where you verify the software updates for authenticity and integrity. I think that's something that is very common in the industry today. Maybe a secure boot would be one, where you check the integrity of your system during the run or boot phase, or maybe you have runtime manipulation detection that runs in the background. I think that one is prevalent in some modules that have a higher security focus. We've struggled with putting that into all modules where you have safety critical or time sensitive issues that the secure boot has had some challenges with getting it working. But I think we have some sort of a secure boot option, or a authenticated boot or trusted boot, that most of our products can support. And locking the test interfaces, that this is one where we have competing maybe objectives from the quality team, wanting to be able to analyze the ECU as it sits in the vehicle without doing anything to interact or interfere or to change its behavior. But these test interfaces are very powerful and have been exploited by researchers in the past. So we've been, I think most test interfaces have been locked down somehow, and trying to use individual device passwords to protect the more sensitive features. That I think that's something that we would see as pretty common in the industry today. If we look at security in 2025, I think that the expectations are very different than what they were 1,000 years ago. Walls and gates were something that were very comforting, maybe, to people in medieval times or earlier, where you had a substantial wall that could keep the bad guys out, and the gates to let you go through there. But today, I think people expect security, but they also don't really want to see it or feel it. And we have airports where we welcome travelers with quick processing, rather than trying to keep everyone out. We have new challenges with reliable electricity, running water, garbage collection. Maybe some of those were not even conceived of 100 years, 200 years ago. Or if we have a snowstorm, you have to clean up the snow and keep the streets ready to go. And we also have new challenges with autonomous vehicles or robo taxis, things that are um, that are could be the subject of an attack from a remote attacker, and we need that to be safe in our cities too. We have these new threats now where new weapons are reshaping our understanding of security. And if you just look at how the role that drones are playing in Ukraine, that's something that is a very different perspective that renders maybe a lot of the ideas that people would have about what security means in a modern world is outdated. Ubiquitous connectivity, where even in um, war zones that you can see what's going on almost real time. And we've also seen municipal operations as the target of remote cyber attacks. So these are attacks that or threats that just were non-existent to a few years ago. I think when we look at zero trust for software-defined vehicles, that's something that we I think that's a new area that we need to consider. What can we do to build security into these autonomous vehicles or software-defined vehicles that have frequent software updates, and and how do we have modules build trust in this new dynamic environment? If we look at the old paradigm, which say like a perimeter defense, we had also at that time highly specified ECUs where each task has a single home. And if we think of an ABS unit, that anything to do with braking in the vehicle had its home in that braking controller. And anything that had to do with the engine controller had its home in the engine controller. And then they would talk and use symmetric keys to authenticate messages to say that it's really coming from the engine controller requesting or the braking controllers requesting 20% reduction in motor torque. And then the engine controller checks the key or checks the message, it matches with the key. So it says, okay, that's really coming from the braking controller. These keys are assigned when you build or service the vehicle. For the most part, they're never changed over the life of the vehicle. And this question of trust is really one. Is this message coming from the module that I've been trusting my entire life? If yes, you trust it. If no, you just ignore it. And so this trust model, I think, is static in the sense that it like never changes for the life of the vehicle or for many vehicles. It's binary, so that you either trust or you don't trust. And it's rigid, meaning that it's very difficult to make changes to swap out a new ECU. You have to rekey the system, and it has to be done in a trusted environment, and you have to get maybe authorization from the OEM to be able to do this module swap. I think when we look at a new paradigm with a more flexible vehicle architecture, like a service-oriented architecture, software-defined vehicle, or even if you have a VSOC actively monitoring for suspicious or anomalous behavior in the field, that you may want your vehicle to change its operation or to change its trust based on things that are happening real time. And so I think for what we'd be looking for software defined vehicles is that we want a trust model that should be dynamic. So it's something that it changes, it's easy to change it. It's nuanced, meaning that I don't just trust yes or no, but the question is how much trust do you have in this source? And maybe you have enough trust to do this action and not enough trust to do that action. And also adaptive. So we need to be expecting that the trust model is going to be changing over time. And when we look at inside of an autonomous vehicle or a software-defined vehicle, we see this question of trust having an increasing importance due to several factors: the authority that the ECUs and the systems are having in the operation of the vehicle, in the access, so that it's we see with connectivity that they're theoretically accessible from anywhere in the world, and with interest where we see researchers and I think just in the previous talk they mentioned, and I think Darmstadt had a program doing automotive cybersecurity, that you have interest in both college professors and students and trying to build interest in security of on vehicles. And we also see this attracting attention from users and researchers, politicians, and the industry as a whole. And I think if we look at trust, how much trust do we need? That I think the 100% trust, it's an unsophisticated goal, especially when we have resource limited devices. And it's something that we will never be able to reach 100% trust. We do have solutions for cell phones and computers already where people have worked out how do we do trust. But I think with physical systems or cyber physical systems, we have new risks, requirements, exposure, and challenges. And so I think for vehicles, we need a different trust model. And this was a problem I worked on with my professor, Professor D. Ma at the University of Michigan, as I was working on my Ph.D. thesis. But if we look at this, the automotive trust, say economics, that the most valuable information is the most valuable item is not access to information. So if I look at my phone, I can see that I'm in a meeting right now with Secure Our Streets, and without doing any authentication. But to open the invitation to that meeting and maybe to join the meeting, you have to do additional authorization or authentication on that. If I wanted to open up my banking app, that would be require additional authentication. And then if I wanted to add a new user to the system and send money to them, you need to do additional authentication and authorization checks for that. Inside of a vehicle, it's not really a question of my front right wheel says that it's going 32.7 kilometers per hour, that's not really a secret for anybody or any system in the vehicle. What we see is the challenge there is what would be the impact if I took an action based on that information. And so this currency to say is the trust that we have. How much can I trust the information? If I get this message saying that the wheel speed is 32.7 kilometers per hour, and I'm going to apply the brakes, or maybe if I get information saying that there's a child running across the street, and I'm going to trigger the automatic emergency braking event, that one, because of the ASIL D rating on that maneuver, that I need to have a lot more trust on that than I would if it's just maybe lighting a warning light. So I think when we look at zero trust in our IT systems, the requester has to prove the identity and authorization. When we look at it in our automotive, well, the changes that we would need to make from the question that the IT security is saying or asking, should I trust the requester and grant access to this person for this information? When I look at it from an automotive perspective, my question is, should I trust this message enough to execute the triggered action? And then another challenge that we would need to think about, if we look at it from the traditional automotive security question, is should I trust? That it now should become how much should I trust? So it should be like a 0 to 100% rather than a yes or a no. If we think about long-term maintenance, that if we have a quality-driven software update, so if we have a significant software quality issue, we build 1 million vehicles, we drive thousands of miles or kilometers, and within 6 months or so, you have 1 billion vehicle kilometers of experience. If there's a serious, significant software quality issue, you'll probably see it in those 1 billion kilometers of usage. The teams that develop the system are still around, and we can come up with a safe and a quick fix. And the longer that this issue remains undetected, the less likely it is that it's going to have a big impact, or it's going to be affecting multiple vehicles or every vehicle. And so the risk of having to do a software update after a long time is just going essentially to zero. If we look at security-driven software updates, though, the longer that a product remains in the field, the more likely it is that someone's going to find a vulnerability. And when a security vulnerability is identified, the entire remaining fleet could be affected at once. So it's not just this calculation or the calculus that we would use for the risk management for quality defects. It doesn't really work for us for security issues. So a couple thoughts that I would like to leave you with for a challenge. I think the security community will need to adapt as the market shifts. And I think security is moving from a technical problem to a compliance problem. The technical problem is still there, but there's a lot of energy that's going to be driven by the compliance issue. And it's not just a challenge with integration, but we have explicit fragmentation in this. And I think what we need to be thinking about as security engineers is we need to be able to sell security up and down the supply chain outside of our companies, and looking for how do we do this. We also need to be thinking about how do we sell security to our leadership within our company. And then I think as we look at software-defined vehicle architectures and how do we use them effectively, we need to rethink our cybersecurity paradigm as well. And when we think about quality here, we need to think about what does the customer perceive our security as good. And if we had maybe really robust security measures, but they interfered with proper operation, that would be seen by the customers as not good security. So if you say take on your new vehicle, it takes 20 seconds from the time you press the button to the time that you're able to drive the vehicle, because you're doing secure boot or other authentication checks, that would be something that would be annoying to customers. If we had something where it caught a lot of security issues, and we had every day there's a warning that pops up on your dashboard that says, oh, you might have a security issue, you should get it checked, that's either going to scare the customer or annoy them, or it builds this sense that, oh, it's just a dumb warning, just ignore it. And then maybe systems providing warning to the OEM, maybe the threshold of giving the warnings to the OEM so that the VSOC can look at it should be different than the threshold for providing warnings to the OEMs. And there's a German saying that I think this follows by, is that the customer will measure quality by how the sausage tastes, and it doesn't really want to see how it's being made. When we think about selling cybersecurity, that we need to be thinking about new metrics to sell security within your organization, and what works to sell cybersecurity to our leaders. I think we don't want to be sensationalist or be like the boy that cries wolf, but we also don't want to underplay the risk that we have and expose our company to more risk than without our leaders understanding how much it is. So I think for a lot of our ones, the question isn't if we have security or if we need security, but how much, and who. So is this the right type of security? Is this the right amount of security? And am I the right person to decide this for the product? And those are the questions I think we need to be thinking about as we communicate that to our customers and within our organizations as well, and to come up with a good way to fund cybersecurity in the development process, and then also after the vehicles are sold. I would say that cybersecurity is arguably the fastest moving sector in the automotive industry today, and that's saying a lot. I would say that we've made a lot of progress, and we've spent a lot of money to get here. And I was thinking of a good example to illustrate maybe what we do with this Gabriel's horn or trumpet is a math problem where if you take this formula, rotate it around the x-axis, it has a finite volume but an infinite surface area. So if you were to pour paint into it, you could fill it up with a finite amount of paint. But if you were to paint the outside, it would have take an infinite amount of paint to do that. And it's sort of like from our security team, we have to solve an infinite problem with finite resources. So I think the challenge that we have is we need to be thinking about how to demonstrate the value that good cybersecurity brings, and how do we communicate this effectively to our organizations. And then to be prepared when your customer or boss asks, are we there yet? I think we need to know that this is coming and have data and metrics ready to say, almost there, honey, so that when you're driving with your kids in the car, you know that they're going to ask it, and be ready for this question and have data and metrics ready to demonstrate to our leadership about where we are. So with that, I want to say thank you for your time and your attention today, and look forward maybe to having some discussion in the room afterwards. So Sergey, back to you.
Thanks, Bob. First of all, thank you, Bob. It was so insightful. I'm pretty sure that I will not call my boss honey, but the rest I will totally sign. That was a really great presentation on time. It's just magic. The room you're searching for is the lounge. There were some discussions and questions in the on the side. Let's say if you guys want to get more insights and maybe also raise your questions, please join Bob in the lounge. He promised me that he will stick around a few minutes after his presentation. Bob, thank you very much. It was very, very good.
Okay, well, thank you, Sergey.